actions. And the technology recovery, and I think I know that we are talking as CA professionals and financial and accounting professionals, but I think everybody is connected now because of the impact. The impact really is interrelated. Everything is connected, and finally there is a financial impact. Of course, there is technology impact, there is health and safety impact, there is actually more importantly insanity impact, and some we have seen across the globe because of the stress that people are experiencing. People are doing crazy stuff that are not typically the day-to-day activity. We're gonna skip my introduction. Thank you, Sai. You've done an excellent job. I think it's said better than written, so I'm gonna skip this one. So before we go into the specifics, let's talk about what is business continuity management. I think in the past, and for all of us who are working with regulated companies and registered with CMA or the likes, there are certain requirements by the CMA to have business continuity and risk management practices in place. For one reason or the other, some organizations take these things seriously and actually apply it. Some do it as they go along, and most of us, if not the majority, actually tend to understand and appreciate the importance of this stuff only when bad things get into reality. So what is business continuity? Business continuity is defined as the capability of the organization to continue delivery of products and or services at acceptable predefined levels following a disruptive incident. And I think what we are experiencing now is definitely a valid example of how business continuity is and should be applied. Now, there is a perception that business continuity is focused more on disaster recovery and IT, but I think the disruption that we are seeing now, it extends more. So it's about the people, it's how you communicate. We have seen AGMs and board meetings actually struggling to conduct their meetings even offsite. So it should address all the aspects of the business and how it continues, including the cash flows in and out and everything during a disruptive incident. And this is not really an incident, it's an event, because it's extending way beyond what we have expected. It started maybe by the end of February, and we have been in almost lockdown since the first week of March, and we are almost 3 months into that, and hopefully after the lockdown that we are going into tomorrow, full lockdown, things are likely to go back to normal. It is an enterprise-wide program designed to sustainably increase the resilience of critical business processes, and I think it's important to stop here and talk about two things. First of all, sustainably increase, which is to ensure that you are, as an organization, able to sustain during pressure time, and also critical business processes of an organization. I think most of us need to go back after this and look at our processes and what really needs to be categorized as critical. So we say we cannot live without these processes, and accordingly we need to ensure that this is operative at any cost, at any time. This would involve, to tell you, investment on the people level as well as the infrastructure level. Reacting appropriately to adverse events, which we are experiencing here, and enabling the resumption of key business activities in a timely and effective manner. And to be fair, regardless of what scenarios you put, you cannot really estimate or assess what the event that's going to hit you is going to look like. But you need to do really your best in terms of estimating the worst that could happen. And frankly speaking, typically, and we have experienced in the past that it's the least likelihood and the highest impact events that really break you. And this is something that we never imagined would take place in history. And I think 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, it was the first time in 100 years that there was not a single airplane flight in the air, which means that there is not a plane flying in the air since 100 years, which is something nobody would have imagined. Three major plans that are developed as part of BCM: the crisis management, the business continuity plan, and IT disaster recovery plan. And this is really the building blocks of a business continuity management program. What is crisis management? I think we are experiencing it, but let's look at the theoretical part of it. So crisis management is the process by which organizations deal with disruptive events that could cause serious damage, be it financial, health and safety, and reputation. And I think all of us are experiencing this now, whether it's financial, health and safety, or other. So, and it's really a serious damage to all of us. Crisis management as a process is a vital organizational component to ensure sustainability of organizations during such situations. And we can look at many examples that are going out of business, to tell you the truth. So many big organizations have filed for bankruptcy in Europe and the US, and I'm sure many will suffer in the MENA region, and specifically GCC and or Kuwait. And that's why sustainability is important. It's really, you are assessed during the time of crisis. How good you are is really not when things are good, it's when things are against you. As I said, many organizations have filed for bankruptcy and gone out of business, and that's why it's very important to look at the sustainability of the matters going forward. Organizations need to take a rapid approach to ensure effective crisis management and handling the threat sequentiality. Now, what does this mean is that the speed of the decision is very important. How fast you move and make a decision is really critical to address the crisis. We have seen this even on the country levels. Some were complacent, like Italy, and they have suffered a lot. Others have been very, very proactive in terms of assessing the situation and taking strict measures in terms of containing the crisis. And even in the US, if you look at the US or the MENA region, I think Kuwait was really a leader in this. They have really anticipated the worst that could happen, and it has been handled in a reasonably good fashion. And we hope that the next period will actually bring things to a closure. What is COVID-19? So obviously we will not go into the specifics of the health matter, but it's actually an infectious disease caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome. Now, nobody really knows how it happened, how it's hitting people, and the challenge is that it's not clear how it's going to impact your body and how your body is going to react to it. Some people are impacted worse than others. They say that even males are more susceptible to the injury than females. But again, it's actually something that nobody has experienced before, not even the SARS or other viruses that come up in the recent period. Threat and crisis. Pandemic is always identified as one of the threats for organizations with a high impact and low probability. Now, I will share with you an example that we have been working with one of the clients. It was a huge debate 1.5 years ago whether a pandemic should be considered as something to be weary of. And we insisted to include this because I know it's very, very remote probability to happen, but it actually happened, and it did not happen in Kuwait, but happened outside, and it spread across without any control, and nobody really knows how to control it. That's the thing, and as I indicated in the beginning, it's the high impact, low probability actions that really need to be considered, because these are the ones that break you, if not kill you. COVID-19 is impacting global economy and local economy alike. Nobody is safe, to tell you the truth. Businesses are experiencing unprecedented challenges, including supply chain interruption, diminished workforce mobility, and weaker financial performance. We have been seeing the recent results from the U.S. unemployment, and it's risen to 30 million unemployed applications, which is a huge amount, and it's actually higher than the Great Depression numbers. And unfortunately, we are in a crisis mode now. So organizations are actually facing crisis. It's not we have passed the amount of or the stage of a threat. The current situation in Kuwait, we wanted to give you some highlights of what's happening, and whether on the organization level or the country level. So prevention efforts being taken, highlights partial curfew from 5 p.m. to 6 a.m. and this has been increased. Lockdown of some residential areas, 24-hour curfew announced as of 8th May. So this is something very new. We are going from tomorrow till the 30th of May in complete lockdown, limiting activities to only 2 hours of walking in your area, and all things should be managed to delivery from co-ops or equivalent. Public holiday for public sector, excluding essential public services, closure of non-essential services such as restaurants, retail shops, malls, public transportation, etc. Financial relief, monetary and liquidity stimulants are in discussion, still not confirmed. CBK measures reduced interest rate by 1.25%. They have loosened the installments for 6 months. Risk weight for SME lowered. Capital adequacy ratio lowered. Lower the capital requirements. Increase of the maximum funding. Increase ratio of loans to value of property. Now, these are all measures that the CBK has taken in a very, very swift manner to ensure that the economy is still active as much as possible. These are the number of cases by nationality until recent, and how it has been rising progressively. Unfortunately, yesterday we had around 600 something. Hopefully today it will be less, and I think the full lockdown is likely to limit the exposure. I think the important aspect is that many of the Kuwaitis who have been studying outside and have been on travels have been returned, and that's why I think the lockdown is good to contain and better monitor the interaction between individuals in all nationalities to ensure that the virus is contained as much as possible. Number of cases in Kuwait have increased to 5,804, and this is as per the 5th. We can see a huge spread in the virus in the marginal communities, and that's really where the risk is. Workers and blue collars in general have been suffering a lot. Now this is partially because of the how they are used to operate on a day-to-day thing, as well as the social habits they have. The impact on the global economy. Businesses are facing supply chain disruption in the form of material shortages, or decline in global exports, and this is very evident. Curfews and lockdowns have a negative impact on revenues for restaurants, shops, malls, and as I said, many businesses. I think there is a very famous food chain in the UK has went out of business called Carlitos, if I'm not mistaken. It has shut down, and they had more than 20 shops in the UK, apart from the ones that have been that are operating outside of the UK. The impact on the domestic and international travel and airline industries due to the pandemic is really huge. So in terms of leisure and hospitality industry, it's really hit in a very strong manner. Traveling is controlled. It's actually limited, as well as the hotels are closed or they are used as quarantine for individuals. A sharp decline in oil prices due to the low demand, and as you have noticed before, perhaps the futures were actually selling at a negative, which means that the supply is too much and there is no storage, and it's actually cheaper to pay money for people to take the oil rather than keep it in your premises, and that's why it has been a unique case globally. And obviously the decline is really a result of lack of traveling and cars not on the streets. There are no cars on the streets, or even if they are very on a very low profile and low periods and small short periods, and accordingly the consumption of the oil is very low. Demand for commercial office space are impacted, obviously, because now, and I think this is going to be looked at not only from the COVID-19 point of view, but beyond that, because I think people will look and assess how can work be conducted remotely rather than having people in the same place, and I think this is going to sustain as an impact. So businesses focusing on commercial office space need to look at alternatives, otherwise it will be a lost opportunity for them. Job market slowdown and higher unemployment rates, and we are experiencing here as well as globally. As I said, more than 30 million have filed for unemployment support in the US, and I'm sure across the globe it's the same. Perhaps the numbers from the US are always very important for us because it's the largest financial market in the world and it impacts everything else. The impact on organizations. So strategic impact, and this is very clear. I don't think it's easy to achieve your predetermined strategic objectives like before. So I guess the first thing that we will talk about later is how to re-strategize your position in the market going forward. Do you want to continue in the same manner? How do you want to look at your business going forward, as well as most importantly is to survive during this period. So it's actually survival rather than strategic. Financial impact, cash flow issues, whether in and out, financial market volatility, foreign exchange rates are actually is a huge exposure, challenges raising funds, and again it's everybody. So a very good example, and I think we are experiencing it all in terms of the rents. So even the owners of property are suffering in terms of having to give a leeway for the renters in terms of the rents, because we as in employees or professionals are not getting the same amount or have been impacted one way or the other. Operational impact, staff unavailability. So everything is done remotely to the most part. Production and supply chain disruptions, and you can even experience it when you look and go to the supermarkets. things are available, but they are not as abundant as they used to be in the past. And you have to be very, very cautious in terms of what you ask for, because today, and we have to be mindful of the fact that we are lucky being in the GCC, because there has been a huge build-up in the inventory because of Ramadan. Now the challenge is how is this going to be looking after Ramadan? Shortage of materials, disruption in project timelines and delivery, obviously, subcontractor failures if you are relying on subcontractors, and these are all things that you as professionals and we as professionals need to start looking at once we go back to normal business going forward. Technology impact, and I think it's apart from some key organizations, I think the easiest thing to save on was IT, and investment in IT now is crucial. You cannot live without IT infrastructure, and a strong one as well. And we have seen that there is inadequate IT infrastructure for remote access has impacted the operations a lot. Lack of hardware devices and application for remote working environment. People are not prepared or were not prepared or even considered this option. Inadequate mechanism for offsite technology support. So maybe you have the infrastructure, but you don't have the team to support, and this is something that's really critical to consider as well going forward, because it's very good to have the tool, but it's really bad if you cannot operate. If you face challenges, and let me tell you this, we have been facing challenges of working remotely, simply as either from an internet perspective or even the hardware itself failing and so on. Legal and regulatory impacts, challenges in fulfilling contractual obligations, challenges in complying with regulatory requirements. And I said there were AGMs and board meetings that have been impacted, and I think many companies, even the country as a whole, will start looking at a more digital approach to things to ensure that it's available as an option. Luckily, some of the deadlines that were not really material have been postponed, but they are still a challenge to fulfill, either from the service provider or from the company itself, both ways. Reputational impact, inability to meet customer demand and expectations, and communication challenges. And I guess this is very clear in terms of if you look at some of the supermarkets, big chains, some are doing better than others simply because they were actually ready for this. Others were just trying to jump the wave, as they say, and it's not as good as it is. The global economy trend. Many countries have eased the lockdown restrictions through various phases, starting with the most essential and affected industries. Social distancing measures are still imposed or recommended throughout. So let me just read yesterday that although Germany has loosened the lockdown and the social distancing, they have started opening up, and they actually agreed to resume the football league. Yesterday they came up with a recommendation to ensure that loosening the lockdown is really controlled and not open it up because things are not really clear on how it will go. Germany, having one of the strongest healthcare infrastructure, some non-essential shops have been allowed to reopen. Schools and restaurants remain closed. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia using an application that will help control health schedules at hospitals. Curfews across the country have been eased. 24-hour curfews in certain cities. The Chinese city of Wuhan implemented full lockdown and harsh rules and regulations, and that's why they are back to normal now. City was able to resume major construction projects as authorities push to restart the whole economic activity. and fully resume rail, flight, and freight operations at the end of May. So I think things are looking a bit bright for Wuhan. For the UAE, by using an application that tracks users surrounding for a positive carrier, things have been controlled, and they went on a full lockdown for 14 days as well. Abu Dhabi and Dubai governments have reopened malls with a capacity for shops of 30% only. So let's say if there were 100 people typically going to a mall, now there are only 30 people at one time. As part of the gradual reopening of the country's economy. Kuwait is one of the first countries to initiate partial lockdown on certain parts of Kuwait. Kuwait government is implementing a high number of testing strategy. As of 5th of May, the cases were 5,804, and I think obviously now it's higher. I think we've surpassed 6,000. As we said, there is huge surge in the marginal communities. The Kuwait government used the digital tracing application and tracking bracelet to address the issues of Kuwaitis coming from abroad. And that's why it's only limited or targeted to a certain group, but it doesn't extend beyond. And we have seen that even with this, unfortunately, some people were not complying by the same, and one of the users of the bracelet was actually captured in a co-op. She was shopping. Now, as of yesterday, closure of all state institutions until June, and now we are actually in complete lockdown till the 30th of May. Hopefully, it will be the last that we see. Crucial crisis response. Now, with regards to the business continuing recovery cycle, there are crucial crisis response efforts to be taken. So, there is the business as usual, and then by the 12th of March, there was the first lockdown. Second lockdown announcement, 26th of May at certain areas. Third lockdown announcement, 22nd of April. And now we have the full lockdown that has been announced just yesterday. The whole idea is to move to the recovery efforts and go back to business as usual. And this is really where the business continuity and crisis management jump into place. So the whole idea is to dissect the process of recovery through phases and deal with it. And as you succeed, you move to the second. It's like a gate approach kind of thing. Now, with regards to actions to be taken, we have seen that the business community has experienced huge impact from COVID, either in Kuwait or costs, including the global supply chain. Let's look at a very simple example, which is the malls. Now, we know quite well that Kuwait is more of a consumption economy in addition to oil and gas, and these are the major two contributors to the revenues of the country, whether internal and or external. Now, with the oil prices going down, this was a huge impact. Now, from an internal point of view, large businesses rely on consumer spending, and this has been impacted a lot, whether from the large groups like Al Shaya or whatever, malls and even small shops have been impacted, and accordingly, the whole ripple effect has impacted the economy as a whole, including service providers, professionals, what have you. There are certain steps that you can take to address the crisis, typically people management, stakeholder management, financial assessment, and continuity of operations. And now, as I said, for the regulated companies, there were some requirements, whether from the central bank and or the CMA, to have certain elements of business continuity and risk management in place. If the organizations were adopting these and embracing this in a serious manner, I think they had a good chance in terms of at least knowing what to do and amending as they go along. Unfortunately, for the majority of the businesses, even big ones, they were not considering these aspects as serious as it should be, and accordingly, it was either copying what others are doing and trying to address this internally to your environment. That's one. Or actually struggling to know where to start to begin with because you're isolated from the business community in general. And as we notice here, the first aspect that we need to look at and address is people management, because regardless of how good your technology and infrastructure is, you still need people to operate, and they are the major component, and the health and safety, whether physical or mental, and we are going to talk about the mental health as well, is very important. Second is the stakeholder management. And again, it's how you are going to deal with your internal as well as your external stakeholders, be it regulators, be it clients, be it economy at large, and so on. The financial assessment, it's very important because we are impacted. There is no cash flow. There is no revenue generation per se. Yes, some companies are doing better than others, but in general, it is impacted. So even if you're selling, maybe you're not collecting. Even if you're delivering your service, you're not collecting, and so forth. So the financial impact assessment is really important, and it's very important to ensure that it's predictive rather than reactive. And the last building block is the continuity of operations, and that's really what we are all striving for, to hopefully go back to a normal life on the personal level as well as on the business level. People, as I said, they are the key assets in any organization. As I said, you can have all the laptops, all the infrastructure, but if you don't have the people to operate it, it's a lost case. It's crucial to deal with the safety and well-being and job securities of the employees. There have been several options or routes that companies have taken, and we're going to discuss some of here. So, people management, definitely it should be more interactive and listening to the employees and support employees' needs. Secondly, build trust among employees. So it's very important at this point in time is not to make people afraid of insecurity, because in the normal situation, apart from anything, they are actually very, very uncertain about the future, whether for themselves or for their families. So this needs to be entertained in one way from a business perspective. Explore methods to working from home, and I think we are experiencing this here now. As a renowned chapter, you are conducting the business as normal in terms of having your events online. Same we are doing in our business as much as possible, conducting work remotely and interacting with our clients or customers remotely. Communicate consistent, unified messages to all employees, and this is very important. So one of the key aspects is to ensure that there is a proper channel of communication with very limited individuals who are conveying the ideas, simply because it's very worrying if you get conflicting messages from different people across the organizations. Communicate positive messages to employees, or at least not negative. If it's not positive, let's not be negative. It can be neutral and realistic. Advise employees to be flexible in working arrangements. At the end of the day, to tell you the truth, if I'm looking at my team, I'm more concerned with the delivery of the work rather than how it's conducted. So whether I'm operating from the moon or operating from home or operating from the office, I think the whole idea is to get the work done on time at the expected quality. That's really what matters to me. Where I am is really irrelevant, and it's a luxury at this point in time. And in general, to tell you the truth, now I'll go back to my very first job, and a guy that taught me a lot. He told me, "Rami, I don't care what you do as long as the client calls me and thanks me for the work. So whether you work from home, work from office, you spend time at night, I really don't care. I need my work done, and the client thanking me, then you have done a good job." And I think this is, after 25 years, we're getting the same message again. Set mechanism for responding for employees' health concerns, and this is really important because apart from the well-being of the employees and their health and stuff, it's actually an image for your organization. So there is a reputational element that an organization needs to look at, in addition to, and more importantly, being a good citizen of the economy. Now, if we look at the sustainability point of view, organizations, whether they are for profit or not for profit, need to be seen as good citizens of the economy, and accordingly to be close to their employees and addressing their needs in this time of crisis is very important, because it's going to impact the image and the reputation of the organization as a whole. And let's be optimistic and realistic. This is going to end, and what's going to remain is the lessons learned out of this and the messages or the actions that have been taken during this time. Communication, and it's very important component during the crisis, as we said. Lack of proper communication may trigger speculation, raise doubts, and we know that human beings by default get triggered by news and information. So if we don't streamline the communication that impacts our business, it's going to be a mess. So stakeholder management is very important, and this is really where you need to define who are your primary stakeholders and categorize them and manage them accordingly in terms of the communication. And this means that it's internal as well as external stakeholders. Employees is one of them, but you have also your clients, your service providers, the regulators, the vendors, and so forth. So the stakeholders need to be defined and categorized. Understand stakeholders' critical priorities, requirements, and their capacities in the short and medium term. And perhaps, to tell you the truth, it's very important to look at the long term as well. Now, nobody would have expected that this is going into this period, but we have started hearing about COVID by the end of November or mid-November in China, and then it spread starting start of the year. And everybody's saying that this is likely to extend beyond 2 years, if not more. So we really need to assess how is this impacting the relationship and the interaction. Establish communication plans to address internal and external stakeholders' interests and needs based on the categorization and the importance. Establish escalation or de-escalation processes to ensure stakeholders are aware of them. Now, what does this mean? So if there is an escalation, who should they reach out to, and who will be the contact person, and how it's going to be dealt with? Especially that there is no personal contact at this point of time. It's all through emails, at best some video conferencing. So they need to get some validity about the channels of communication and who is responsible for it. Communicate proactively with your stakeholders on recent changes that are happening around the organization, and obviously at the economy if it impacts you impacts the relationship itself. Adopt targeted marketing strategies to approach your customers or clients. Now, there has been a huge surge in actually online webinars, as well as phishing emails, and you can see also a rise in getting certifications online during this period. Now, this is something that you need to look at, because from my point of view, it's very important to to maintain the relationship with your current key stakeholders rather than build new ones as much as possible. Why? Because if you go very thin, you're not gonna win anything. So I think the best element from my point of view, is to focus on what's important for you at this point in time, and trust will continue after that. People remember each other and will hold each other. Establish a process to communicate proactively with regulators to understand legal and regulatory compliance requirements and subsequently inform relevant parties. Now, this is done, to tell you the truth, through several ways. So there is the formal, and this is done mostly one way from the regulators towards the concerned organization, but there is also informal communication, especially for key industries that are important to the economy. So why is that? Because it's very important to understand how these organizations are impacted, and accordingly how the regulator will be reacting to this. The organizations need to assess the current and future financial performance and take measures to ensure positive cash flows. Now, I don't know how to put this, but it's really tough times for everybody. Apart from several organizations or industries, I will just talk about Kuwait. Other than that, everybody's suffering. So identify available cash and liabilities. Identify urgent payments. These are that are important for you to continue serving. Track down cash buffers. Calculate available cash and the unutilized credit lines, and this can be a very good venue. Identify loan repayments. Assess any financial aid or assistance established by the government, obviously, and assess zakat or taxes requirements set by the government. Allocate cash reserves based on prioritization, and forecast cash flows by establishing a cash forecast for various scenarios. Let me tell you what I have done personally in one of my engagements. Now, because of my role serving the region, I have two large projects currently going on in Saudi Arabia. And I was relying on one subcontractor to do the work. Now, because of the fact that there has been a lockdown and no traveling, this subcontractor actually lives in UAE and he is not able to travel to Saudi. So what I've done is I've renegotiated with him the contract, and now the commitment has gone down by 50%, limited to certain deliverables, and my team is doing the rest of the work now from Kuwait. Now, this is a very simple example, although real, but it applies, I'm sure, for so many other situations that you need to look at. So continue with what's very critical for you to continue your business, but look at your cash inflow and outflow and ensure that there is proper matching between them to ensure that the salaries are matched, are paid on time as much as possible, suppliers are paid on time, and so forth. And what organizations need to urgently assess, respond, and resume operations to avoid further disruptions. And as I said, hopefully, and I trust and I have a belief that inshallah this will be over. And accordingly, yes, we are in a crisis mode. Yes, we are striving to continue, but I think we need to start looking what after. And this is really where the tricky part is. So identify current contracts agreed with clients, vendors, subcontractors, and ensure that the conditions are revised if possible, the deadlines are renegotiated, perhaps prioritization is done in a different manner, and also reschedule payment plans for them and for you. So it's a win-win situation. Identify which business functions are essential and which can be temporarily suspended. And this is very important. As I said, I think what's pre-COVID-19 is definitely not what would come after that, because I'm sure that all businesses across the globe will start looking at their mode of operation in a different manner, whether from a strategy point of view and or operational point of view. Do we really need to have a large office to sit in? I'm telling you for a fact, because again of the extent of traveling that I used to do, I don't think it's going to be as important to travel or as expected to travel as before, simply because people are now accepting the fact that there is video conferencing, working through the technology, and that's where, if you as a business is able to transition your work or your business model to adopt to this, I think that's where the success will come. Identify vendor continuity strategy. So what vendors need to continue, what are the prioritization, and so forth. Reassess the current risk of the supply chain, and this is very important. Rearrange working arrangements, shifts for back office and site workers, and stockpile critical equipment, materials, and tools as needed. And ensure alternative contracts with third-party manpower supplies if needed. So you would have more than one option, because nobody knows where the hit is. I'll give you a very nice example. I went to buy actually some sweets from a sweet shop, and it is known in Salmiya to have lots of options. And I went in maybe at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, and I asked the lady, what's happening? I only have 5 or 6 options. She said, unfortunately, our manpower is locked in Jilib, so they are not able to operate. So they rely now on the remaining manpower in Hawali, if I'm not mistaken. In general, so the production is low. Abide with related governmental requirements, obviously, and this is very important. So, although I think Shriram is smiling here, but unfortunately, as simple and easy to read, some people don't, and otherwise we wouldn't have seen violators and penalties being announced every day. There are some apparent actions. We have observations that organizations have done in the short term. What they have done: staff layoffs, that's on the very negative approach. Paid unpaid leaves, reduce and hold output, reduce operational hours, flexible working arrangements such as work from home as much as possible, because some industries, I know the construction actually have been on the street. They have been conducting the work normally. Work rotation, closure of branches and certain locations, move to online and delivery services, cut spending and procurement, delay payments. Now, these are all contributing to several aspects. One is the safety of the employees. Second, about the cash flow management. Third, I think it's although it might be a tough time, but I think it's a good chance to actually look at your manpower and really maintain the ones that make a difference for you. It's very hard, I know, but again, it's business, so you need to look at what matters and who matters for your business, and accordingly, if you have additional fat that you really don't need, maybe it's something that you would address. What should we do post-crisis? Phase 1, assess the crisis. So it is important to assess the current situation, market condition, recovery efforts, government directions, and take the necessary decisions to declare crisis is over. And this will be done on 2 matters. One, on the country level, that's one, but also you need to look at how is this impacting you as a business, because maybe the country has said that the crisis is over, but you as a business, it's not over for you yet. And we have addressed some actions that you can take in the upcoming slides. So, second is post-recovery, is assess the actual impact to the organizations and develop necessary strategies and action plans to ensure full recovery. Establish effective communication with stakeholders. So currently you will have communication on the crisis, but post-recovery you need to start communicating what are you doing to get back to business, how are you going to do it, and you need to start planning for this now, not after the crisis is over, because this will take time, because you need to practice it and refine it. Third phase is maintenance. Develop the necessary documentations and plans following the crisis to enhance resilience and ensure continuous activities. And I think this is a very, very important awakening lesson for all of us. Don't underestimate risk management and business continuity, regardless of the complexity of how you're conducting it. But it has to be documented, it has to be exercised, and it has to be challenged, and challenged seriously, because you don't know when it's going to happen and how severe it's going to be. So, for monitoring, monitor market conditions and arrange staffing according to current market conditions and needs. Communicate positive messages to employees and thank them for their efforts. And that's really important, because I don't know if you have noticed or not, in the past period, the health, the mental health of individuals in general has actually suffered a lot. Some people are actually struggling from not being out in the sun and in the nature, and they are going into some depression, and they have real examples in the community that I'm dealing with. Some actually, we have seen a surge in the murders and theft, either across the region or globally. So it's something that we need to be mindful of and take it seriously. Ensure the safe return of employees to office and continue to take precautionary measures. Now, as I said, it has to be phased approach, and ensure that it's people going back to office are only essential, and it should be done on a rotational manner to ensure things are smooth until we are back to full normal operating mode. Ensure flexibility with leaves and working arrangements, and I think it's very important during the next period, because again, we have been in this lockdown seriously, apart from complete lockdown since end of February, early March. And unfortunately, even for Eid, and I wish everybody was celebrating Ramadan and who's going to celebrate Eid, even Eid this year is going to be only minimum to the people living in the same house. So there are things that people have been arranging during the past period you need to consider going forward. Reassess technology needs and requirements, and for me this is very important going forward, because without this and without being innovative in the way you conduct your business, even for us as financial people and professional people, I don't think we have a chance for survival. Continue to assess any financial aid provided by the government or banks as required, if needed. Identify payments that have been delayed or pending repayments from clients and or customers. Again, as I said, you rub my back, I rub your back, but at the end of the day, it's business, and we have to go back to collecting our money. Post-crisis recovery, conduct an impact and damage assessment to assess the actual damage and impact of the crisis on the organization. And this impact is reputational, financial, and operational, or any of them. Develop a communication and communicate strategies and plan to your stakeholders on returning back to normal operational capabilities. And post-recovery should involve the following. financial performance, servicing clients and customers, stakeholders' interests. So one aspect is dividends. Have you considered this or not in terms of your financial analysis and impact assessment? OPEX and CAPEX plans, expansion plans, refinance plans. Conduct lessons learned from the crisis and identify improvement plans. And as I said, for the organizations that have willingly and seriously embraced risk management and business continuity, I think this will be a good exercise for them, because they will assess whether they have been doing how realistic it is. Now, the real challenge comes to the organizations that have been putting these actions on the side and not giving right attention, and more importantly, concentrating, for instance, the decision making for certain individuals. We know clients that have been impacted severely because they have been locked out of the country during the last period. They have gone on leave and they cannot return. Now, there is also a concentration of the decision making that needs to be addressed. I think for the maintenance, you need to develop comprehensive framework, including business policy procedures, continuity plans, crisis communication plans. Enhance and fine-tune certain operational policies to ensure that they are able to operate during these tough times. Conduct business awareness training to employees to increase awareness, and I think it's important, to tell you the truth, to do this to all employees because everybody is impacted. And conduct live simulation scenarios to enhance preparedness, and this is very important because, as I said, it's the least likely, the highest impact events that really break you, and you need to take this to the next level. One thing that we wanted to address is really the mental health and well-being of employees. And if this wasn't important, I don't think the government would have addressed this formally. So they came up with this national counseling program called Corona Care that provides free counseling sessions to those affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. It has medical health professionals on the front line who is really like, and yesterday I think we have heard that there is a doctor who actually passed away. COVID-19 patients, individuals in quarantine, and the general public. So don't underestimate the mental health and well-being of your employees or the people at large. From a technology point of view and other actions, these are the actions that organizations should take once the crisis is over. Remove all routing points, remove all VPN accounts, disable access through mobile devices, scan all servers and storage devices to ensure that they were not infected, check performance, utilization, and disk space of all servers, ensure all tokens and dongles are returned back, ensure laptops are returned back, review VPN access logs, timely input of offline data, reroute telephones back to primary office, identify backlog and arrange catch-up processes, perform end-of-day validation tests. Now, this doesn't mean that this will not come back again, but I think as a post-review, you need to assess these and see how they were used, and if there are any violations or loopholes, they need to be addressed. So in case, God forbid, we are in the same situation again, we don't have the same exposure. And obviously archive documents as necessary. But I again, to tell you the truth, after we are going virtual and everything, I think hard copies or physical copies will only be maintained at a minimum, and archiving will be mostly from a technological point of view. We're almost done. Perhaps you are bored, but we're almost there. Some information on business continuity crisis management. that we have experienced in the last period. So COVID-19, obviously, heavy flash floods in Kuwait 2018, earthquakes and tremors from neighboring countries, fire in Ambikir headquarters during construction in 2000. These are all considered as crises and things that need to be addressed as a business continuity element. This is just a high-level representation of our methodology. So this is for your own nature. It addresses the steps to be taken from a business continuity point of view. Lastly, from a crisis management point of view, the things that need to be addressed are develop a crisis management framework and plans, assess and develop crisis options, action plans, and recommend strategies to be adopted by the organization, whether business and or IT. Assess the liabilities arising out of the crisis and provide the recommended solutions to limit the liabilities and loss. Independent business action review. So, as I said, take a post review in terms of your reputation, your image, your operations, your technology, and so forth. Review effectiveness of crisis communication plan and strategies, and monitor of stakeholder financial positions and provide guidance internally and externally. And I think we're done. Over to you, Mr. Shiro.
Mute it so I can mute it from here.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Robbie. And I think really a great presentation. I'm audible.
Sriram, can we be a little closer?
So may I ask, yeah, Sai, am I audible from where I'm speaking?
Yes. Yeah, but if you can use the mic, it will be good. Otherwise, it's fine. If you can use the earphones or mic.
Okay, so I think you can unmute and I can speak from your this thing. Great. So I think I'll speak from Rami's connection here.
Yes, that's right.
I was saying it's been a real wonderful presentation. Thanks to Rami. What I'll do is quickly I'll take you through a few questions. We have quite a little many questions, Rami. So what I'll do is I'll try and moderate a few of the questions together, similar ones, so that you can actually give your expert opinion on how this can be handled. So one question common across all many attendees is the time period. In your opinion, when do you think the business will be as usual? We can hit maybe December end, or what is the time period you're looking at?
I think realistically to go back to normal, not before Q1 2021.
Q1 2021. That is the earliest we can expect, right? And what people are also asking through many questions is, which industries do you think will be the most affected? So it will take the longest time to revive, and which of them are the quicker ones, kind of?
Okay, so if we look at consumer business, for instance, like spending, I think companies like Al-Shaya and the likes, I don't think they will come back to normal in a fast manner, simply because people have suffered during this period in terms of generating income and money. So they have other commitments that probably are more important in terms of addressing. Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing that will be also affected from my point of view is leisure, because simply, even if the ban for traveling is over, I don't think people will be willing to take the risk.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because when the airports open, personally, even I may not immediately start traveling. Right, yes. I'll give it at least a few months or weeks at least.
Yes. Yeah. So these are, from my point of view, these are the main two industries.
One of the attendees are asking, how can companies turn the current crisis into an opportunity? Is there any positiveness to it? That's what they're asking.
Yeah. That's what I said. I think from now you need to look at your strategy and how you want to focus on your business going forward. And the ways that you used to conduct your business need to change to address similar situations or others in the future. So if you relied heavily on face-to-face interaction or physical interaction in terms of making your business, I think you need to look at how other channels can be used to ensure that you're still serving, and also find ways to market your product or service in a more interactive way through technology.
Online measures
Yeah,
and technology.
Yeah.
So similarly, also a related question is how can you cut cost? I think you've answered it very well. So you could possibly, instead of renting bigger spaces, you could go online and you could
Yeah.
basically consider whether you need certain functions and you can sort of downsize them and all that. There's one very interesting question here where they're talking about a recent announcement in Kuwait relating to salary reductions now.
Yeah.
So what is the practicality of implementing this? Both regulatory, of course, there's one side to it, but on the other hand, there are a lot of employees, and it's a real concern to the employee class.
Okay. First of all, this announcement has not been confirmed. It is still in discussion, but I think typically, like employees, like any stakeholders, there is a contractual and there is an interaction relationship point of view. So I guess if the relationship between the organization and the employee is strong, I think in a very, very informal manner, it will be I take a hit and you take a hit with me.
Right.
So until things are back to normal, then we can negotiate. Otherwise, the other alternative, it's very easy for the employer to say thank you very much and go. And I think nobody will be happy with this, or the benefit is really for no one.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's a very good viewpoint in the sense, if there's not going to be any reduction, then there's no benefit to anyone for the entire. But with the reduction, I think there's a win-win kind of a situation on both sides. Sounds good. There's one participant asking about the oil prices. Do you see any recovery in the near term or medium term in recovery of oil prices? And then, if at all,
I think I cannot claim I'm an expert on this, but from a typical professional point of view, I think the oil prices are likely to go back once the flights get back to normal, and accordingly the consumption of oil will go up. And obviously, as larger countries start loosening lockdown, and the consumption of the cars and stuff can take action. Now we need also to look at another aspect because of I think there is a rise in the awareness about the environment and thing. I think there will be also an increase in more electrical cars and hybrid cars to save the economy. So there will be a balance between both from my point of view.
Okay. I think now people will more start looking at this alternate energies more seriously than before.
Exactly.
That is the change. Mr. Masood, he's the CFO from Commercial Bank. He's asking very interesting question. He says personal loans installments deferral for the 6 months will provide approximate cash of 1.2 to 1.5 million KD in the hands of individuals because there is a deferral. Now, will this result in a huge surge or increase in the spending from the individuals, and will it increase the savings? So, what change in the consumer behavior do you think will happen?
Okay, I'll try to be very diplomatic in that. Now, this saving is mainly for the Kuwaitis, in terms of mainly, but again, even the expats. But the excess will be spent by the Kuwaitis on consumer. I think the excess will be saved by the expats because of the uncertainty in the future.
True. I think that's a very, very, a good answer. I wouldn't call it diplomatic. I think it's a well thought. Because the behavior pattern is different between a national and an expat. And a national would always go and have a spending kind of a behavior on consumer goods, whereas the expats are here to save.
Yeah. The other thing that, if you recall what happened maybe in 2009 when there was the Makamal Amiri, everybody took 1,000. This this
Yeah,
evidenced a huge surge in spending in terms of either mobiles or cars or whatever. But
right.
so I think it's gonna be the same. But I think the majority of the experts will be more stringent in terms of saving because they're not sure about the future and they'll be reluctant to spend.
Right, right, exactly. Now here, Ranjit, thanks for the question. So Ranjit
Ranjit?
from Deloitte, he's
Hi,
a
Ranjit.
partner. So he has a question, interesting again. What do you think that the worst affected industry can do to survive this crisis if the recovery phase is prolonged? Right, considering there is very little government stimulus. Now, a related question, another attendee has also asked this, in comparison to the rest of the world, or at least rest of MENA, the government stimulus or the efforts coming are comparatively low and less. It's not that many. So, combining these two questions, so what do you think that the worst affected industry can do to survive this prolonged crisis?
Again, I think the if you look at the hotel and leisure or for the consumer business or any kind of business that is affected, I think going back to your strategy and how you see the business going forward is very important. I think it cannot be business as usual even if work goes back to normal and the economy goes back to normal because you don't know when the next crisis is going to come. It's going to how it's going to come. So if we look at, let's say, airplanes, they have been looking now at reseating and repositioning of the seats on the planes.
Mm-hmm.
They have been also addressing the cost of the traveling. So now they are going to cut down, for instance, the number of people on the plane, but increase the cost. So again, it's going back to the drawing board, looking at your strategy, what you want to do, and how you want to do it going forward. What was valid until 2019 should be scrapped and out of the business and out of your drawback and just take it forward.
It's a complete revamp and think outside the box,
Yeah.
right? It's a zero-based approach.
Yeah.
I'm just running through the list of other questions. Yeah, I think fairly, I think I've covered all the questions. I would.
Sriram, just Sriram.
Yes, Sai, go ahead.
Yeah, Rami has not answered my question, so I would like to ask directly.
I missed it. Okay. Could you please repeat your question?
Yeah. See, there is an announcement by all the governments, either from GCC or other international countries, the stimulus package. But when you compare to other countries, Kuwait has announced only $1.6 billion US dollars. So when you compare to Bahrain, Oman, other countries in GCC, this is the lowest, which is only about like 1% of the GDP. So do you expect any new announcement is going to come?
I cannot make a prediction, but I think, first of all, as a fact, you are right. What the Kuwait has announced as a stimulus to the economy is very low compared to the region, either UAE and or Saudi Arabia. And I think it's gonna come, but I think what they are concerned now with is to ensure that business is back to normal, and I think the stimulus will be reassessed based on the speed of recovery. Because if they make announcements now, everybody's gonna rush, from my point of view, to apply for the stimulus. But I don't know how is this going to be spent in the economy. I think the central bank and the government in general is trying to delay the stimulus to a point where things are clear. Who's going to go back out of business? And let's be fair, it's a complete reassessment of even the manpower in the economy. So excess capacity of expats that are not really required, violators and stuff, and accordingly, whatever stimulus going to be spent needs to be spent in the areas that are required for the growth of the economy going forward. That's my personal assessment.
Great. Thanks for this.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's also a good observation in a sense, as a comparative study across all the regions. Currently, I would still say the entire stimulus is still not out, and the comparative study is still going on in terms of any avenues for more, stimulus to be given from the government. Because as you see, the other than the banking and finance, if you look at it, also the complete curfew or a lockdown is just coming up now, whereas it has already been done in a few other countries outside. So I think it's only a matter of time that Kuwait should also be following suit in terms of more stimulus packages for everyone in the country. So with that, Sai, over to you. You want to, if there are no more questions, possibly we'll go ahead and we can close the session for today.
No, also I would like to know, is there any news about the Kuwait Stock Exchange? Is it going to open or is it going to close during this next curfew period?
So today there was an announcement which we could see where Kuwait Stock Exchange has come out announcing that the operations will continue. So in spite of a complete lockdown, the announcement said that it will continue to operate. So that is a limited knowledge we have. But that this is an information as latest as of this morning. So we need to see how the operationalization is happening, in terms of how it will work. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I request C.A. Sriram to extend the vote of thanks to C.A. Rami.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. Rami is our MENA RA leader, and he has taken time out of his regional pressures. And thanks for your precious time, Rami. It's really been very helpful. I think what you've done is put a very systematic road in this chaos. Basically, they say put some sort of a system to the confusion. Yeah, so it's a discipline in the confusion. It's how we need to go forward, and that's a very good roadmap and thinking. And what I really found really very interesting and useful in what you said was your presentation covered, in fact, various dimensions. I could, when I was taking notes as you spoke, I could myself list down at least about 6 dimensions of how you covered the entire topic. One is from a dimension of different industries, wherein you said oil, the real estate, restaurant, healthcare, kind of, all industries. The other dimension is all the functions. You could cover all the functions like HR, production, supply, technology, finance, and that was quite helpful. You also covered the dimension of geography, in the sense you looked at Middle East and compared to Kuwait and then Germany and rest of the world, right? So that was a good dimension itself. And the stakeholder dimension, you looked at employees, the management, and then the suppliers, the customers. You had basically a mix of the stakeholders, and you also spent quite a good time on regulators as to how they basically are responding at various countries. I think it was a multi-dimensional coverage, which is absolutely helpful. In the lighter vein, I would say, we can self-assess to find out whether we are really giving an essential or non-essential service, right? That is something, for us to assess ourselves. So thank you so much. My thanks also goes to the CA chapter, Sai and team. I think thanks for giving us the opportunity to present this topic. And thanks to all the participants. And it was, I think, a very interactive session in terms of so many questions coming from different angles and from all the participants. So wholehearted thanks to all the participants. And let us continue to stay safe through these uncertain times and work from home and continue to basically enjoy, I would say, this uncertainty and live through it. Wishing you all the best. Last question here, as I'm speaking, I'm getting is, when can we get the CPE completion certificate? Okay. For all the CA members, it is an automatic upload. For non-members, we'll just check internally and we can revert as to is there any way we could present a CPE certificate for attendance, which they can utilize elsewhere. Right? Thank you so much.
If I may add, guys, we have prepared the survey, and if you don't mind, I can share it with the chapter and circulate it to the attendees. It's on SurveyMonkey. Just gives an assessment to you on how do you think your organization is ready from a business continuity and crisis management. So if you don't mind, we're going to circulate the survey for you, and you can do that.
Of course, I would say that
you're most welcome. can
Yeah.
send it to us and we'll circulate and we'll give the feedback accordingly.
Sure.
Sure.
Thank you.
Many thanks
Thank you.
for really
And
accepting our invitation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Stay safe. Bye.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks. See you. Bye bye.
Bye.